Behind the Shades.
Take us right from the beginning. Let's start right from the genesis of it. Tell us
Right.
how things started with you when it comes to your journey and surviving some of the things that you went through.
So I think the most prominent issues I had was, and the ones I remembered was my father disowning me and the issues that I went through with that. And that sort of from the point of when it just was cut and dry. And I just, over periods of time, running into people and being told, he doesn't recognize you. He says he's only got one daughter, and that's my sister. He doesn't acknowledge you as a daughter anymore. And just the constant stuff. I remember that, but I didn't really understand that all the other stuff that I went through. I was sexually interfered with as a 6-year-old, but I blocked that out. So that played on all of it played on my mind subconsciously. So much stuff was on my mind subconsciously. And it wasn't until I sort of understood a bit, probably about 10 years ago, but didn't connect the emotions with it. And I remember driving to work one day when I was 50 and just bursting into tears driving it on my car. And I got to work, and then one of the managers, who was very supportive and understood because his wife had gone through something similar, he actually triggered it and made me realize 100%, because he talked about church ministers are not the nice people that, a lot of them are not the nice people that they make out they are. And that was my issue. He was the man who interfered with me was a church minister. So all of a sudden, everything started falling away and, opening up and the overwhelm. So yeah, it was very, very, I didn't realize that how I was living and what was happening with me was not normal. I thought it was all normal. And then it wasn't until I went to a psychologist a couple of years ago, and she told me that I was suffering from PTSD and depression, and said, "Did you know that?" I went, "No, why would I know that? I just got on with life." So it was then that I sort of, over doing different therapies and self-helps and meditations, past life regressions, and the psychologist, EMDR, they call it, and lots of other things, hypnotherapy, that I realized how much I'd gone through, how much of my normal life, I thought was normal, was not normal. So, it was even just the fact of both parents are alcoholics, both parents domestic violence. I heard it, I saw it. I didn't realize how much it affected me. Even, these days, these days where it's illegal to drive drunk, whereas back when I was a child, I used to have to probably average every 3 months, my father would drive up to his brother's place, and then for a weekend away, 3 hours away it took. But then on the way home on the Sunday, he would do the Sunday session in the pub, and he would always drive home in the dark, drunk. And of course, I crept over into the back and lied in embryo position in the back of the car, and just terrified every time he slammed the brakes on for a near miss. So, there was no accident, but I didn't realize the trauma that it was creating from being in that situation. So it's just a constant from 6-year-old through to when I was about 30. I decided I can't see my father anymore, because he was just another kick in the guts. I was trying to do the right thing, hoping things would change. So it was just adding to the trauma. Did I answer the question?
No, you've more than answered the question, and that's a
Right.
beautiful way to put it. Because what I'll say for you, Donna, is I don't know if you have children. When you have children at 6 years old, very vulnerable,
Yeah.
very dependent on their caregiver, whether that is a biological parent, a step parent, or a foster parent, whomever is in that situation. You're in a situation of trust. And for
Yes.
you were being interfered with at 6 years old, very
Yeah.
vulnerable, very prone to that type of behavior. And as you mentioned, You may not know that it's wrong. I've interviewed some people, and one of the things that they told me was a little bit shocking, is that they didn't know that it was wrong because their body is reacting to it in a way that kind of feels good. They just don't know. So
Yes.
when you look back at that age, when you began to realize that, this doesn't make sense, how old were you that, and what were your initial thoughts when you actually had that feeling afterwards?
Well, the funny thing is, I honestly, my father was in the Navy, so we were at a Navy base in Victoria. And I do know at growing up that he should have been there for about 3 years. Well, he wasn't. We left in 12 months, and there was a period of time it was just snapshots of my memory trying to comprehend what was going on. And then I recall when we left Melbourne, we went back to Sydney, and we lived with the grandparents, which is not normal for services and people in the services. They have a house for you. But so I understood he got me out of there quickly, because back then it was a case of, it was okay. People just ignored the fact of children being interfered with by adults. And once I got out of there, all I ever did was recall is just a memory. I would get these flashbacks of being at, because this happened a Sunday afternoon after church. It was a case of, I went to Sunday school, they went to church, and for some reason, whatever, they trusted me to stay with him and help close up the church while they went home, and he brought me home later. So I have this memory of being in the car, feeling very embarrassed, knowing he's there, knowing my brothers are not with me, but just feeling awful. And that was the only thing I carried with me as I grew up, was this awful emotion. I would get this flashback of this car, which is a specific, very unusual car, just a couple of things. And I hated church. I hated religion. And I don't know where all that came from. So it wasn't until I was an adult that I realized the story. But there was another incident with this man. We were at a football game, and this has all come back slowly. And I believe it comes back when the soul spirit knows you can cope with it. So this came back slowly. Only 6 months ago, we were at a football game, a men's football game, and this minister took me to get a drink or an ice cream or something, but didn't take me back the way we went. Took me around the car park, because it was a lot of trees and parkland sort of thing, around the car park, and took me in between the cars, and got down on his knees and took his trousers down. Now, I remember standing at the end of the cars, don't want to go. But because I was 6, I couldn't remember how to get back to my parents, my mother. So I was stuck there. I felt like I was trapped. I don't remember the full story, but I just know that I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this, but I couldn't go anywhere. So the strange thing from this is, and I've only just realized this, I have 4 grandsons, and they all play football or soccer, but I can't, and I have 2 sons. And while I went to my son's football games, I just had this fear. I just couldn't relax. I couldn't settle. And my grandsons, I can't go to the football games. I can't. So I've realized now why I can't, because it was the conscious mind, the body says, well, the mind says, right, we'll just avoid that fear again. We'll never, ever go to a football game. So that's where that sort of started from. And yeah, it wasn't a case of there was one day. All this came to fruition as an adult.